capabilities, and there is some like higher level access for certain types of stuff. Another thing is right now the network protocol is basically just serialized Ruby objects, but there's no reason why the network protocol couldn't be language independent. So if I wanted to make it like XML RPC or something like that, and then Python or any other language could use the same backend. So finally some demos. So I think it's time to do some sweet graphics because, all right. So I'll start up with something I hacked up quickly. So basically the way these scripts work is pretty simple, but you just call like idarub.autoclient, which will automatically parse the command line and figure out like the host name and IP address, or the host name and port. And then that returns an IDA object, and then you can just call any method that would be in the IDA SDK on that IDA object. So I call like get screen EA to get the current address and stuff like that. So this is a pretty simple script. And then let me run it. So this is a brickout implemented in IDA, and I'm actually using the cursor inside of IDA to move around the brickout. So I don't actually do any reverse engineering, so oh, I got it stuck. Anyway, I need to work on that. All right. So what else do I have? So basically, the way that works is since this is being interrupt-driven, I can still use the IDA GUI while scripts are running because the scripts are they're only interrupting IDA to run when they need to. So basically, the way that works is I just made a little brickout game, and then I just like generate the string for the screen, and I just push all of the frames to IDA in a comment. So you actually can see it. It's pretty simple. So you just say like string is for the thing, and then I just set a function comment with the string. So I just do this in a loop. And then I also, you can see I call ida.getCursor. So I just query the cursor position every move, and then based on where the cursor is, you can see it moving it around. That changes where the pedal is. So yeah, that's how that works. So it's pretty simple, and that's kind of the cool part about it, is that all of this code, you can do stuff like that. Some other demos. So I think there's a few unique ideas in idarub that make it particularly useful. So one of the things is collaboration. Both the server and the clients were designed so that a client can connect to multiple servers or connect to the same server multiple times, and a server can be connected to by multiple clients. So this allows things like have one script that connects to 5 different servers and then does some sort of collaboration. So one example of this is maybe you want to port some comments between one IDB to the other. So a simple way you could do this is you have one idarub script that connects to 2 different instances of IDA, and then you just scan for the comments in the one and port them over to the other. So you could extend this to do some sort of like IDA sync type thing. So I have a little example set up here. So this is just a database where I have some comments here. And then the same database, just without the comments. And then I'll start the server here. I'll start a server here. So now I have 2 different servers, one running on 1234 and one running on 1235. And then I wrote this really small script that will port the comments between the 2. So, and I have a little shell script that I just sleep for 2 seconds so I can switch over to the Windows. And then I just run comment, telling it to comment between those 2 different databases. And then you can see that it scanned and then ported the comments over to the second window. So you can definitely do stuff like that, which can be pretty useful. So you could say like, okay, I'm working on analyzing one piece of code. Someone else is sharing the same piece of code. Now I want to connect and synchronize like the names of our variables or synchronize comments and stuff like that. So the collaboration aspect, I think, is pretty important. Another thing I think is pretty nice about it is being able to integrate it. Since you have a way of calling IDA remotely, you can call IDA from any environment. So you can call it from, like a Solaris box or something. And you can just write scripts that you can just pass command line arguments and get the values back. So it makes it really nice for just being able to integrate into other stuff. So here's an example that I did after seeing PyMay, was that it's really useful, and Luis talked about this too, but being able to integrate debuggers and disassemblers and stuff like that. So a few lines of Ruby, I wrote up this script that will debug something and then resolve the data dynamically. So I'll show that. So this is Minesweeper. And then the idea is that there's this data section in the executable which is uninitialized data, so it's not stored in the binary at all. But obviously there's going to be values at runtime. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a script that debugs a WinMine process interactively and then allows you to query these values and set them as comments. So I'm actually SSH'd into my OS X laptop here, just to also show the network aspects of it and stuff. So I just have this little resolve data script that just goes through and connects with uses an interpreter to connect to debug the process and then query the data. So it's pretty simple. Okay, so start here, and then I will run a copy of Minesweeper, and then what I can do is I can say resolve data, and then you see it connected the WinMine process at PID 2888, and then it found where the IDA cursor was at that address, and then what the value of it at that address is, and then it sets it as a comment. So I can just do this again, and I can go through and resolve data for any of these values in a live running process. So that's sort of some ideas for doing debugger, IDA interaction, and stuff like that. So all of these comment values are coming runtime from Minesweeper. So if I close it, see, this is going to break. So anyway, so that's one of the ideas between integration. When you have this sort of taken out of IDA and just callable from a script, you can start interacting with all different pieces. I could have like a Python script that calls some Ruby stuff, and then it makes it a lot easier. And I have some other examples for that. So one really cool thing is I whipped up this quick GDB integration. So it's just some GDB init hacks and a few lines of Ruby, and it builds to IDA link. So I will demonstrate that. So this is just /bin/ls on OS X. So go over here to the beginning, and this is the entry point. So I'll set my cursor up here on the beginning of the program, and then I will type gdb bin ls after I start the server. Okay. So I can type IDA break, and it queried IDA and found that the cursor was at 1C32, and it set a breakpoint there. So I just set a breakpoint wherever the cursor was. Now I can run, and now I broke on that instruction. And so now, I'll move this over here. So I can type IDA step instruction, and it will step to the next instruction, and then tell IDA to follow along. So you can see the yellow cursor is following along as I step through this code. And then I can IDA comment and say like, blah, and that will set a comment at the current instruction, or at the current line I'm debugging. So I can step again, and then say something else. So this is really tiny amount of stuff, and it's actually pretty useful to be able to, because the hardest part is, so now I'm like, say I'm going to step into this call. It's really nice to be able to like just, keep on stepping through all of this stuff and having IDA just follow along. So, and the way that's implemented is pretty simple. There's just this GDB init script, and it just shells out to a little Ruby wrapper, and then that's oops, and then that's just like this much code. So, in pretty much GDB star, in 51 lines of code, you can write, and so including the GDB wrapper and the Ruby script, you can write a little bridge to bridge GDB and IDA together. So you could do the same things. And by the way, this is on Darwin, so you can see it's happening over the network and all that stuff. It's pretty cool. Another thing I did, which I'm not going to demonstrate because it doesn't really, it's not that interesting to see happen, but I wrote this thing called Shell, which was used for getting interfaces for Microsoft RPC functions. So it was like, 3.3 thousand lines of code, and then I basically just wrote a small adapter to interact with IDA-rub, because before it would just take a DLL from the command line and then do everything internally. And instead, I just backed it to an IDA database, and then you can add comments and all that sort of stuff. So that's another place where integration is really nice, because now with 80 lines of code, I can just sort of talking with IDA instead of talking to the file system, and then I can add comments and all that sort of stuff. So then this is just on the topic of how you can still interact with IDA while the plugins are running. So for example, I want this. I have this script that calls blink, and it just loop setting a comment on and off, and you can see I can still like scroll around and blah 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 like while it's going. So if you want to have really annoying IDA databases that say like, I don't know. So another cool thing about this is that, like I said, IDA supports multiple clients at the same time. So I can go crazy with a bunch of blinks up in here. And then, so you can see I have multiple clients at the same time. These are all separate scripts, right, all running, and do stuff like that. Also, there's the much improved version of Blink, which is the marquee. And I can throw in some blinks and that shit on top of it. So it's like the GeoCities of IDA. So that sort of give you an idea of, so I mean, it may not obviously be clear. So one of the nice things about being able to still interact with IDA and be able to talk to it at the same time is that you can have like an interactive shell, and then you can basically be working in IDA and working in a shell and sort of doing stuff like that. But also you could have scripts that sort of stay in the background, like, query something every minute and see if something updated or something like that. So you can sort of have jobs running to do different sorts of stuff. So you could have something running that's talking to a server, and then when it gets a new message that like you should update a comment if you're writing some collaboration tool, and then it can do that. And it doesn't affect using IDA. So normally when you run an IDA plugin, it just pops up this box saying like the plugin's running, and you can't use IDA at all. So, So none of my scripts actually do anything related for reverse engineering. So this is just sort of a joke because they're all flashy.